Part 1. Tokyo had its own rhythm at night. Slow. Steady. As if the city only truly came alive when people stopped talking. The lights in the skyscrapers faded one by one, leaving only scattered windows glowing in the darkness like dead eyes staring into the void. Beneath the streets, however, the subway never slept. An immense network of steel nerves stretched beneath the city, feeding life into every corner of the metropolis. No one understood that rhythm better than Sakuma Ren. He had worked the night shift for 4 years. 4 years of walking along cold, damp tracks. 4 years of listening to electricity hum through high-voltage cables. 4 years of breathing the familiar scent of machine oil mixed with old concrete, rust, and mold. At night, nobody talked. Nobody asked questions. There were only inspection reports, ticking clocks, and the echo of your own footsteps disappearing into endless tunnels. That night began exactly like every other. Perfect. Predictable. Boring. At 1 a.m., fresh snow blanketed Shinjuku. No trains were scheduled to arrive for another 40 minutes. Ren stood inside a small maintenance room, taking a sip of cold coffee while scanning the electronic operations board mounted on the wall. Green text scrolled steadily across the display. Line numbers. Arrival times. System statuses. Everything appeared normal. Then he felt it. A vibration. So faint he almost ignored it. Ren froze. The sensation wasn't an earthquake. It had a rhythm. Regular. Circular. Like a heartbeat pulsing through concrete. A maintenance engineer with 4 years underground couldn't mistake it. It was the vibration of an incoming train. The problem was, according to the schedule, no train should have been there. Ren looked up at the display board. Nothing had changed. No alerts. No schedule updates. No arrival announcements. Then he heard it. A metallic grinding sound. Soft. Almost restrained. As if someone were deliberately trying to silence it. A sound that shouldn't exist at such a low speed. Ren stepped out of the maintenance room and walked toward the abandoned platform. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered weakly, casting enough light to reveal every crack in the aging tiles. The air felt colder than usual. And carried the sharp smell of rust. Then, deep within the darkness of the tunnel, a faint light appeared. A train emerged. Slowly. Absurdly slowly. The moment Ren saw it, he knew it wasn't a model currently in service. Its exterior was painted an outdated silver gray. The windows looked cloudy, as though coated in decades of grime and oil. Even the transit company's logo had been worn away so badly it was nearly unreadable. But the strangest thing wasn't the train itself. It was the silence. There were no brakes screeching. No automated announcements. No mechanical noise. The train simply glided onto the platform like a drifting corpse. It stopped precisely at the safety line. Smoothly. Too smoothly. The doors opened. A wave of stale air drifted out. It smelled of damp concrete, cold metal, and abandoned basements untouched for decades. The lights inside the carriage were dimmer than the station's. A sickly yellow glow painted everything in shades of decay. Ren stood motionless. Without realizing it, he tightened his grip on his flashlight. Then someone stepped off. Only one passenger. A middle-aged man. Thin. Slightly hunched. Wearing a dark overcoat. He walked slowly across the platform. His footsteps made almost no sound. As he passed beneath the fluorescent lights, Ren caught a glimpse of his skin. It was unnaturally pale. Grayish. Almost blue. Like someone who hadn't seen sunlight in years. The man never looked at him. Not once. He simply walked straight ahead, crossed the empty platform, and disappeared toward the northern maintenance stairwell. A section of the station that had been sealed off for years. Ren opened his mouth to call out. Nothing came out. His throat had gone dry. And for a brief moment, a strange thought crossed his mind. The man didn't look like someone who had just gotten off a train. He looked like someone who had been returned. The train doors slid shut. Without a sound, the train drifted back into the darkness of the tunnel. Within seconds, it was gone, leaving behind an empty platform. And an oppressive silence. Ren remained frozen for several moments. His heartbeat had quickened. Then logic slowly pulled him back. System error, he muttered. Or some kind of test train. He returned to the maintenance room and opened the station's security camera system. The monitor displayed multiple camera feeds from different angles around the platform. Ren rewound the footage. The train appeared. The doors opened. The man stepped off. Ren narrowed his eyes. The image flickered slightly as the man passed beneath one of the cameras. His face wasn't visible. Not blurry. Not obscured by motion. Just blank. As if the camera couldn't focus on it. Ren replayed the footage. Same result. He switched to another camera angle. Then another. Different positions. Different lighting. Same outcome. The man's body was perfectly clear. His clothing was visible. Every movement was visible. But his face looked as though someone had crudely erased it from reality. Ren frowned. A cold feeling crept into his stomach. He opened the system logs. There was no record of the train. No train number. No route code. No service identification. Nothing. Then he noticed something strange. A single line briefly appeared at the bottom of the log before vanishing. Ren's eyes narrowed. He knew enough about the system to understand exactly what it meant. Final station, undefined. He stared at the words. Then turned toward the route map hanging on the wall. The map was old. Printed on thick laminated paper. A tangled web of subway lines crossing the city. At first glance, everything looked normal. Then he noticed it. A thin branch. Barely visible. Like a strand of hair. A line extending from a secondary Shinjuku route and disappearing downward into empty space. A line Ren was absolutely certain had never existed before. He blinked. The branch vanished. The map returned to normal. Ren stood silently. A chill ran down his spine. According to protocol, he should report this immediately. An unidentified train. An unidentified passenger. A severe camera malfunction. But his hand stopped above the radio. He imagined the paperwork. The skeptical looks. The questions. The possibility that exhaustion had simply gotten the better of him. A long shift. Cold coffee. Too little sleep. Eventually, Ren lowered the radio. He opened his notebook and wrote. Unidentified vibration detected. Recheck later. Outside, the tunnels were silent again. Above ground, Tokyo remained peaceful. As though nothing had happened. Ren didn't realize that by choosing silence that night, he had already stepped onto a railway line that existed on no map. And not every train was meant to return. Part 2. Sakuma Ren clocked out just before 4 a.m. But Tokyo gave him no sense of closure. At dawn, the city looked like a patient recovering from major surgery. Clean. Orderly. Carefully arranged to hide whatever had been removed during the night. He stood on the main Shinjuku platform, waiting for the first train home. Everything looked perfectly normal. Cleaning crews polished the floors. Electronic boards displayed arrival times accurate to the second. Early commuters stared down at their phones, their exhausted faces familiar and reassuring. None of them knew that only a few hours earlier, a train that belonged to no schedule had passed beneath their feet. Ren boarded his train and took a seat beside the window. As it pulled away from the station, habit made him glance at the glass. His reflection stared back. Pale from lack of sleep. Tired. But unmistakably himself. For some reason, seeing it filled him with relief. A relief he couldn't explain. When he finally returned to his small apartment in Narima, he didn't go straight to bed. Instead, he took a long, hot shower. Steam fogged the bathroom mirror. Ren stood beneath the water far longer than necessary, trying to wash away the lingering sensation of cold metal that still seemed embedded beneath his skin. It didn't help. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faceless man stepping off the train. The image was impossibly clear. He couldn't shake it. Eventually, he sat down at his laptop. Using his technician credentials, he logged into the subway's internal system. He wasn't supposed to access it from home. He knew that. But curiosity had become stronger than exhaustion. He searched every database he could reach. Train records. Maintenance logs. Incident reports. Nothing. No train. No passenger. No unusual activity. The entire night had effectively been erased. Then he found something. And the discovery made his blood run cold. Inside the route map revision history, there was a tiny modification timestamped at 1:12 a.m. The change had been overwritten almost immediately. But traces remained. Something or someone had added a new rail line. Then deleted it. Ren stared at the screen. His pulse quickened. The line wasn't supposed to exist. Yet the system clearly showed that it had. Even if only for a few seconds. The clock read 6:48 a.m. Morning sunlight filtered through the curtains. The ordinary brightness felt almost offensive. Too normal. Too safe. Ren finally closed the laptop. Software glitch, he muttered. That's all. A system bug. An undocumented test. There had to be an explanation. There always was. Eventually, exhaustion won. He fell asleep. And immediately began to dream. He was standing in a tunnel. An endless tunnel. No walls. No ceiling. Just darkness stretching forever. Somewhere ahead, invisible footsteps echoed through the void. Then a voice whispered beside his ear. Soft. Close. Far too close. Don't get off. Ren woke with a violent gasp. His heart hammered against his ribs. The room was dark. Silent. Empty. Yet the words lingered. Don't get off. That evening, Ren returned to work. He spent the first several hours trying to keep himself busy. Transformer inspections. Voltage measurements. Routine maintenance checks. Anything to stop himself from thinking. It didn't work. The memory of the train never left. Just before midnight, he was recording readings in a secondary control room when the steel door behind him opened. Ren looked up. And froze. An old man stepped inside. Tetsuro. Ren knew who he was. Everyone in the subway system did. Tetsuro had been a train operator for over 30 years. According to company records, he should have retired the previous year. Instead, he'd taken a long leave of absence. Then returned to work as if nothing had happened. But something about him felt different now. Older. Much older. His back had become permanently hunched. Most of his hair had turned white. His eyes looked sunken. And there was something unsettling about the way he focused on people. As though he constantly had to remind himself which reality he was standing in. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Then Tetsuro broke the silence. You saw it too, didn't you? No greeting. No introduction. Just that. Ren stared at him. Saw what? Tetsuro smiled. But the smile never reached his eyes. The train that shouldn't exist. A chill crawled up Ren's spine. The room suddenly felt colder. How do you know about it? Tetsuro didn't answer directly. Instead, he pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. He let out a deep sigh. The kind of sigh made by someone carrying a burden for far too long. Then he looked up. There are things down here that don't need names. His voice was low. Slow. Measured. And there are rules nobody writes down. Ren tightened his grip on the pen in his hand. What rules? Tetsuro raised one finger. Rule 1. His eyes locked onto Ren's. If you're on that train, never sit in the last row. Even if it's empty. A second finger. Rule 2. His voice dropped lower. Never look into the windows when the train passes through the third tunnel. A third finger. This one trembled slightly. Rule 3. Tetsuro swallowed. If the train stops and the doors open. He paused. Do not get off. Ren stared at him. What happens if I do? Silence. A long silence. Then Tetsuro whispered. You never come back whole. Before Ren could ask another question, the control room door opened again. A young woman stepped inside carrying a backpack and several rolled-up blueprints. She offered a polite bow. Then looked at Ren. Curious. Alert. Intelligent. I'm sorry, she said. My name is Kobayashi Mio. She adjusted the blueprints under her arm. I've been granted permission to conduct research on underground architectural structures in this sector. The moment she finished speaking, Tetsuro sprang to his feet. As if electrocuted. His reaction startled both of them. He stared at Mio. Then at Ren. Fear and anger mixed in his eyes. You shouldn't be digging. His voice shook. Things down here don't like being remembered. Mio frowned. You used to operate the Shinjuku Auxiliary Line, didn't you? Tetsuro's face darkened. 30 years ago there was a Project Dash. Stop. The word exploded from him. He turned immediately and headed for the door. Fast. Far too fast for a man his age. Within seconds he was gone. Leaving only a faint metallic smell lingering in the room. Mio watched him disappear. Then turned back toward Ren. For a moment neither spoke. Finally she asked. You've seen it too, haven't you? Ren didn't answer. Instead, his eyes drifted toward the glass window overlooking the tunnel. His reflection stared back at him. Perfectly normal. Perfectly clear. Then, for less than a second, he thought he saw another figure standing behind him. A shadow. Watching. Waiting. When he spun around, nothing was there. Mio's voice lowered. Every 27 to 30 days, a train appears. Ren looked at her. It doesn't exist on any transportation map. She swallowed. And every time it shows up. Her voice faded. For the first time since entering the room, she looked genuinely afraid. There are always people who never come back. At that exact moment, a vibration rolled through the floor. Soft. Rhythmic. Like the heartbeat of something enormous waking up beneath the city. Ren felt the blood drain from his face. Because suddenly he understood. The strange train wasn't a one-time incident. It was coming back. And his life was never going to be normal again. Part 3. The decision to board the train didn't come from courage. It came from something far worse. An urge that couldn't be ignored. The same instinct that makes people stare at a wound, even when they know it will hurt. Ren understood that feeling all too well as he stood on the abandoned lower platform beneath Shinjuku Station at 1:09 a.m. 3 nights after his first encounter with the train. His wristwatch displayed the correct time. Yet somehow, time itself felt wrong. The air was thick. Heavy. As though the tunnels were holding their breath. Waiting. Beside him stood Mio. She had traded her research coat for a dark hoodie, but her eyes still shone with the same intensity. Not excitement. Determination. The kind possessed by people willing to sacrifice everything for the truth. Several yards away stood Tetsuro. He remained near a concrete support column, staring into the darkness of the tunnel. Under the fluorescent lights, his pale face looked like an old photograph left too long in the sun. "This is your last chance." His voice was rough. Dry. "If it appears tonight." He paused. "There's no turning back." Ren nodded. Nobody replied. Nobody needed to. All 3 of them had already crossed the line separating witnesses from participants. 1:12 a.m. Ren felt the vibration before he heard anything. A pulse beneath his feet. Steady. Deliberate. The overhead lights flickered twice. Then stabilized. Deep inside the tunnel, a pale glow emerged. Ren's stomach tightened immediately. He recognized it. The train. The impossible train. Slowly it rolled out of the darkness. Silent. Exactly as before. No screeching brakes. No announcements. No engine noise. Just motion. The doors slid open. No air escaped. No sound followed. It felt less like a train arriving. And more like a doorway opening. A doorway swallowing the platform's light. Waiting. Watching. Inviting. Ren stepped aboard first. The moment his shoes touched the floor, an icy sensation ran through his body. The carriage was strangely clean. Not freshly cleaned. Abandoned clean. The kind of cleanliness found in places untouched for decades. Gray plastic seats showed no scratches. Metal handrails felt freezing cold. The floor carried no footprints. No dust. No evidence that anyone had ever been there. Above the seats hung old advertising posters. Campaigns from more than 20 years ago. Products that no longer existed. Smiling models whose expressions felt unnervingly artificial. Frozen. Like photographs of people already dead. Mio entered behind him. Her eyes moved rapidly, absorbing every detail. Tetsuro came last. The instant he stepped inside, Ren heard a faint sound behind him. Click. A lock engaging. The doors closed. The train began moving. No acceleration. No mechanical vibration. One moment it was standing still. The next, it wasn't. Ren sat near one of the side doors. Far away from the rear seats. Exactly as Tetsuro had instructed. Mio sat across from him. Tetsuro remained standing. Both hands gripping a handrail so tightly his knuckles turned white. His face looked pale enough to belong in a morgue. The first several minutes passed in near total silence. The train passed through the first tunnel. Nothing happened. Then the second. Still nothing. As normal as an impossible train could be. Then they entered the third tunnel. Everything changed. The carriage lights dimmed. Slowly shifting from white to a deep yellow. Like old hospital lighting. The air grew heavier. Harder to breathe. Ren could feel pressure building inside his chest. The windows began reflecting the interior more clearly. A mirror image of the carriage. He immediately remembered Rule 2. Never look into the windows during the third tunnel. So he kept his eyes forward. Focused. Rigid. But beside him, Mio wasn't looking away. She was staring directly into the glass. Her face suddenly lost all color. "Run." Her voice trembled. "There are people in there." Ren's heart skipped. "Don't look." His reply came instantly. "Whatever you do, don't look." But it was already too late. Without turning his head, Ren noticed movement from the corner of his eye. Figures. At the back of the carriage. 5 of them. They hadn't walked in. They hadn't appeared. It felt as though they had always been there. And only now were they being allowed to exist. 5 passengers sat quietly in the rear seats. A businessman. A woman in office attire. An elderly man. A college student. An ordinary-looking commuter. Everything about them seemed normal. Except for one detail. When the train shook slightly, their bodies didn't move. Not even a millimeter. As though they weren't part of the same reality. A woman slowly lifted her head. Without looking toward them, she spoke. "I got off at that station." Her voice was emotionless. Flat. Like someone reading from memory. Mio inhaled sharply. Tetsuro closed his eyes. The woman continued. "The doors opened. I heard someone call my name." A pause. Then her head tilted sideways. Far too far sideways. Bones should have snapped. But they didn't. And now I'm still here. The train began slowing down. Not mechanically. Not naturally. It felt hesitant. As though the train itself was uncertain. As though it were deciding something. Tetsuro whispered under his breath. A prayer. Or perhaps a warning. Then the train stopped. At the far end of the carriage, the rear doors opened. There was no station outside. No platform. No tunnel. Only red. An endless crimson void. Dark structures rose from below. Towering columns that appeared alive. Their surfaces pulsed. Contracted. Expanded. Wet. Organic. Like exposed flesh still breathing. A foul smell flooded the carriage. Rot. Blood. Decay. Ren nearly gagged. Then one of the rear passengers stood up. A young man. His face looked terrified. Like someone waking from a nightmare. "This isn't my station." His voice cracked. "I got off at the wrong stop." He took a step toward the open doorway. Tetsuro screamed. No. Too late. Something invisible grabbed him. The young man's body lurched forward violently. As though a giant unseen hand had seized him. His feet left the floor. His body stretched. Then stopped abruptly at the threshold. Held in place. Caught inside something impossible. The sound that followed wasn't a scream. It wasn't tearing. It was worse. A slow splitting noise. Like wood being forced apart. Like reality itself cracking open. The man's body separated vertically from head to groin. Perfectly. Cleanly. Slowly. No explosion of blood. Only thick black fluid pouring downward. Both halves continued twitching. His mouth remained open. Trying to scream. But no sound came out. The doors closed. The body vanished. Gone. As if he had never existed. Nobody spoke. Mio doubled over. Dry heaving. Ren couldn't move. Couldn't blink. Couldn't breathe. His eyes remained fixed on the spot where the doors had opened. The floor there was spotless. Pristine. As though nothing had happened. Tetsuro trembled violently. Tears streamed down his face. "I saw that before." His voice cracked. The last time. Ren slowly turned toward him. You said you came back. Tetsuro nodded. I did. His eyes looked hollow. Broken. But not all of me. The train started moving again. Above them, the electronic destination display suddenly flickered to life. It had remained dark since they boarded. Now distorted symbols appeared. Scrambled. Unreadable. Characters shifted and rearranged themselves. Again. And again. And again. Until finally the message stabilized. Mio looked up. Her face turned deathly white. Ren read the words. And felt his blood freeze. Next station, Terminus. The final station. Somewhere deep within the train, a low sound echoed through the metal frame. A deep, rumbling vibration. Almost like laughter. The laughter of something ancient. Something enormous. Something that had just realized its prey wasn't going to escape this time. Part 4. After the display showed next station, Terminus, time inside the train stopped behaving the way time should. There was no sensation of acceleration. No feeling of slowing down. No landmarks passing outside the windows. Nothing to measure movement against. Only a constant, steady motion. As though the train was no longer traveling through space. As though it was being swallowed. Slowly. Relentlessly. By something deeper. Mio sat curled into her seat, gripping the straps of her backpack so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Tetsuro remained standing, but his posture had worsened. His back seemed more bent than before. Almost as if gravity itself had increased inside the carriage. Ren felt it too. Each breath became heavier. Each heartbeat slower. We're descending. Mio's voice barely rose above a whisper. Ren turned toward the window. The tunnels were gone. Outside was only darkness. Not the darkness of an unlit tunnel. Something denser. Absolute. A void so complete it swallowed the train's reflection. No lights. No motion. No sense of distance. As if the train were drifting through an infinite cavity. Descending where? Ren asked. Mio reached into her backpack and pulled out a bundle of aged blueprints. The paper was yellowed. Fragile. The edges worn from decades of neglect. I found these in the city archives. Her hands trembled slightly. Wartime records. Classified. Then erased. She spread the blueprints across the floor. Ren immediately recognized familiar symbols. Rail lines. Transfer stations. Ventilation shafts. But the overall structure was wrong. Terribly wrong. The rail network wasn't designed to connect neighborhoods. It spiraled downward. Every route converged toward a single point far beneath the city. A center. A destination. A mouth. This isn't a transportation system. Mio pointed toward the center of the map. It's a feeding structure. Tetsuro laughed. A dry sound. Like rusted metal scraping bone. So you finally understand. Mio looked up. You knew. His smile vanished. I was there. Silence filled the carriage. Then Tetsuro spoke. Very slowly. As though every memory hurt to retrieve. 35 years earlier, Tokyo had expanded its underground infrastructure at a reckless pace. New tunnels. New stations. New projects. One of those projects was different. It had no official name. No public documentation. No place on any city map. Its purpose wasn't transportation. Its purpose wasn't defense. Its purpose wasn't shelter. Every great city buries something. Tetsuro stared into the darkness beyond the window. Tokyo buried this. Deep underground, engineers constructed something enormous. Something beyond ordinary architecture. Not a bunker. Not a facility. A system. A living system. What kind of system? Ren asked. Tetsuro's expression darkened. The kind that requires fuel. Ren frowned. Electricity? No. Oil? No. The old man's eyes lifted toward him. People. The word hit the carriage like a hammer. Ren felt his stomach tighten. What do you mean? Tetsuro looked away. The missing people. His voice became softer. They aren't missing. They're collected. A tremor ran through the train. As though the train itself had reacted to the statement. Mio pointed at the center of the blueprint. The area was a dense cluster of overlapping structures. Impossible to interpret. Impossible to map. This is the core. Her voice shook. A complete city. A city beneath the city. But it wasn't built for people like us. Ren remembered the glimpse he had seen when the doors opened earlier. The red flesh. The breathing surfaces. The smell of blood and decay. His throat tightened. That's not concrete down there. Mio slowly shook her head. No. It's biological. The silence that followed felt endless. A living architecture. A city built from bodies. Tetsuro opened his eyes. For the first time since they boarded, he looked directly at Ren. No avoidance. No hesitation. Only exhaustion. The people who reach Terminus don't all die. A chill crawled across Ren's skin. Some come back. His gaze dropped to Tetsuro. Like you. The old man nodded. Slowly. Painfully. But nobody comes back whole. Then Ren noticed something. Something impossible. Something that instantly made his blood run cold. Tetsuro had no shadow. The carriage lights illuminated the floor beneath everyone else. Ren's shadow existed. Mio's shadow existed. But beneath Tetsuro, nothing. Only empty light. As though illumination itself didn't know where his body ended. Ren blinked. The phenomenon remained. Mio had seen it too. Her face turned pale. Tetsuro. The old man looked down. Then laughed softly. Not with humor. With resignation. I left it down there. His voice was hollow. My shadow. My reflection. A lot of other things too. Without warning, every light inside the carriage went out. Darkness exploded around them. Instant. Absolute. Ren couldn't see his own hands. Couldn't see Mio. Couldn't see anything. Then he felt it. Something moving. Very close. Right beside him. Not touching. Just existing. Close enough that the hair on his arms stood upright. A presence. Watching. Breathing. Waiting. Then the lights came back. Tetsuro was gone. Ren shot to his feet. The old man was no longer standing beside the handrail. He was at the far end of the carriage. Standing near the rear seats. Perfectly still. At that exact moment, Ren heard a whisper beside his ear. Close enough to feel the breath. Don't turn around. His body froze. His pulse exploded. Cold sweat ran down his neck. Across from him, Mio stared toward the rear of the train. Her eyes were wide. Terrified. Her lips moved. No sound came out. Slowly, Ren looked toward the back. And saw Tetsuro. Or something wearing Tetsuro's shape. The figure stood unnaturally straight. Its back was no longer hunched. Its face looked younger. healthier, years younger. But its eyes were empty, vacant, like unfinished copies of human eyes. Beside Ren, the real Tetsuro was shaking violently. "It's learning." His voice cracked. "The last time I escaped." He swallowed. "I didn't stay long enough." His gaze locked onto the duplicate. "This time I think it wants to finish the job." The display board above them flickered wildly. Symbols appeared, disappeared, reappeared, over and over, like a computer suffering a catastrophic failure. Finally, the screen stabilized. One message remained. A single destination. A single truth. Arriving, terminus. At that moment, the train began slowing. Not mechanically. Not naturally. It felt as though the universe around them was folding inward. Compressing. Closing. A deep vibration echoed beneath the floor. Like the first breath of something colossal awakening from sleep. Mio stared ahead. Her voice broke. "If this thing really is a city." She looked at Ren. Terror filled her eyes. "Then terminus isn't the destination." A pause. The vibration grew louder. Deeper. Hungrier. "It's the entrance." And somewhere ahead, hidden within the darkness beyond the tracks, something moved. Something that had finally realized its visitors were beginning to understand what it truly was. Something waiting beyond the final station. Something alive. Part 5. The train stopped without warning. No brakes. No vibration. No sound. Motion simply ceased. As if someone had erased the concept of movement from reality itself. Ren nearly stumbled forward. His body still expected momentum. But the floor beneath his feet held him in place. Not physically. Something stranger. It felt almost adhesive. As though the train itself didn't want to let him leave. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then the doors opened. What lay beyond wasn't a station. At least, not any station Ren had ever seen. The space outside stretched into impossible distances. Vast. Immense. Yet somehow claustrophobic. A crimson glow illuminated everything. There was no visible source. No lamps. No fixtures. The light seemed to seep from the environment itself. Like sunlight shining through flesh. Towering structures rose from floor and ceiling alike. They curved. Twisted. Expanded and contracted. Slowly. Rhythmically. Breathing. The entire place appeared alive. "We're inside it." Mio's voice came out hoarse. Barely audible. Ren couldn't answer. Because deep down, he already knew she was right. He stepped off the train. The instant his foot touched the platform, an icy sensation surged through his body. Up his legs. Into his spine. Into his skull. The surface beneath him wasn't solid. Not entirely. It wasn't soft either. It yielded slightly beneath his weight. Like standing on living muscle. The sensation made his stomach twist. Behind him, Tetsuro stepped down as well. The moment his feet touched the platform, a deep vibration echoed through the enormous chamber. A sound like a creature releasing a breath it had been holding for decades. The train doors slammed shut. The noise echoed endlessly. Bouncing through the vast structures around them. Returning distorted. Twisted. Like hundreds of bones clicking together inside a giant ribcage. Ren spun around. The train was gone. Not departing. Gone. No tracks. No tunnel. No carriage. Nothing. Only empty red space. The train had never existed. Or perhaps it had never needed to. They stood alone. 3 people inside something that wasn't a city. Yet wasn't entirely a creature either. Columns rose everywhere. None were straight. None were symmetrical. Each resembled giant ribs growing from the floor. Then Ren noticed shapes attached to them. Human shapes. At first he thought they were statues. Then one of them blinked. Mio covered her mouth. Oh God! Ren stepped closer. The crimson light revealed the truth. And he nearly vomited. A man had been fused into the structure. Or what used to be a man. His body had been stretched flat against a curved surface. His ribcage opened outward and merged into the surrounding architecture. Veins spread through the walls like roots. His skin connected directly into the structure around him. His eyes remained open. Alive. Aware. Watching. A faint sound escaped his throat. Not a cry. Not a plea. Merely a reflex. Like breathing. Like blinking. A biological process he no longer controlled. Mio stumbled backward. Her entire body shaking. This isn't sacrifice. Her voice cracked. This is construction. Tetsuro nodded. A terrible sadness filled his eyes. This city wasn't built from concrete. He looked around. At the endless forest of living pillars. It was built from everyone who got off at the wrong station. A pulse traveled through the floor. The walls responded. The ceiling responded. The structures responded. Every fused body moved with it. Thousands of tiny motions. One synchronized heartbeat. The resulting sound rolled through the chamber like distant wind moving through a forest. Except it wasn't leaves. It was people. Thousands of people. Breathing together. Mio dropped to her knees and hurriedly opened her backpack. Her hands trembled as she spread the old blueprints across the living floor. Her eyes widened. No. Ran looked down. What is it? She pointed towards several symbols. New markings. Markings that hadn't existed before. It's growing. A cold silence followed. It's still expanding. Ren followed her gaze toward the distance. Far beyond the nearest structures. New formations were emerging from deep pits in the floor. Not being built. Growing. Like organs. Like tumors. Like roots. Human-shaped masses slowly stretched and branched outward. Joining the larger structure. Becoming part of it. Mio's breathing quickened. Tokyo survives because of this place. Ren stared at her. What? The pressure. Her voice became frantic. The city's failures. The stress. The overflow. She pointed at the enormous living architecture around them. This place absorbs it. Everything people bury. Everything they ignore. It carries the weight for the city above. A dry sound interrupted her. A crack. Then another. Tetsuro collapsed. Ren turned immediately. The old man was on his knees. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. His face twisted in agony. Then Ren saw what was happening. And wished he hadn't. Tetsuro's chest was opening. Not being torn apart. Opening. Like an old machine being dismantled. Skin separated. Muscle shifted. Bone unfolded. Inside were pale structures unlike anything Ren had ever seen. Not organs. Not bones. Building materials. Components. Architectural pieces grown from flesh. It's time. Blood spilled from Tetsuro's lips. I owed it. His eyes met Ren's. The rest of me. No. Mio rushed toward him. There has to be another way. The floor moved. Something emerged beneath Tetsuro. Long pale tendrils. They wrapped around his legs. Not violently. Not aggressively. Efficiently. Like a system reclaiming borrowed property. The tendrils began pulling him toward the distant core. The center of the city. The heart. Tetsuro didn't resist. He simply looked at Ren one final time. For the first time since meeting him, there was no fear in his eyes. Only exhaustion. The exhaustion of someone who had been running for 35 years. Don't let it learn how to be human. His voice barely carried. If it ever understands us completely. The tendrils tightened. The surface won't be safe anymore. Then he was gone. Pulled into the living architecture. Bones cracked. Shifted. Merged. Until no separate shape remained. Moments later, a new pillar stood where he had vanished. Another part of the city. Another piece of the machine. Another person forgotten. Mio stood frozen. Tears streamed down her face. Run. The floor trembled again. Stronger this time. Ren felt it too. The entire city had noticed them. Hundreds of eyes opened within the walls. Thousands. Watching. Studying. Learning. Then a voice filled the air. It came from everywhere. And nowhere. Not male. Not female. Not human. Yet unmistakably intelligent. Classification. The voice echoed through the city. High comprehension. A pause. Then. High structural value. Ren felt ice flood his veins. Because he suddenly understood. The city wasn't merely observing them. It was evaluating them. And it had decided they were useful. Very useful. Part 6. The voice echoed through the living city. Not loud. Not quiet. It simply existed. Everywhere. Inside the walls. Inside the floor. Inside Ren's skull. High comprehension. High structural value. The words repeated. Again. And again. Like a system processing data. Evaluating. Calculating. Deciding. Mio dropped to one knee, clutching her head. Blood trickled from her nose. Run. Her voice trembled. I understand now. Ren turned toward her. His own head was beginning to throb. The pressure in the air felt unbearable. What do you mean? Mio slowly raised her eyes. The terror in them had changed. It wasn't fear anymore. It was realization. The kind of realization that destroys hope. Tetsuro was wrong. The city pulsed. Another heartbeat rolled through the structures. Every fused body shuddered in unison. Mio swallowed. People like Tetsuro are building materials. She pointed toward the endless forest of living pillars. The city uses them as support structures. Ren felt his stomach sink. Then Mio pointed at herself. And at him. But people like us. Her voice broke. We aren't materials. The city trembled again. Harder. The crimson glow intensified. Almost immediately, Ren understood. Materials could be replaced. Architects could not. A crack split the floor beneath Mio. Without warning, a narrow fissure opened directly under her feet. Soft organic tendrils burst upward. Wrapping around her ankles. Mio screamed. The sound echoed through the endless chamber. Run. Ren lunged forward. He grabbed her wrist. The instant their skin touched. Something entered his mind. Information. Impossible amounts of information. Not words. Not images. Understanding. Pure understanding. It flooded into him like an ocean. He saw the city. Not as it existed now, but as it would become. New tunnels. New stations. New passengers. New victims. The network expanding beneath Tokyo. Spreading. Growing. Learning. At the center of everything sat a vast intelligence. A consciousness stretched across miles of living architecture. Directing. Calculating. Evolving. And then Ren saw something worse. The intelligence wasn't finished. It was still immature. Still learning. Still becoming. And it needed teachers. Ren. Mio's voice sounded distant. Weak. She was being pulled downward. The tendrils tightened around her legs, slowly dragging her into the opening. Ren pulled harder. Every muscle in his body strained. But the city was stronger. Far stronger. For a moment, their eyes met. Mio already knew. There was no escape. No rescue. No miracle. Only choices. Terrible choices. And consequences. The walls around them began moving. Thousands of eyes opened. Watching. Studying. Waiting. The voice returned. Closer now. Interested. Rare pattern. Adaptive cognition. Suitable for integration. The words echoed through Ren's mind. Not spoken. Uploaded. Like data. Mio suddenly laughed. A short, broken laugh. It terrified Ren more than her screaming had. I understand the blueprint. Blood ran from her nose. Her ears. Her eyes. Yet she continued smiling. Because she had finally seen the whole design. And wished she hadn't. What blueprint? Ren shouted. The city pulsed again. Mio looked directly at him. There was never just one city. The word struck him like ice. There are others. Silence. Absolute silence. Even the city seemed to pause. There are more beneath other places. Her voice weakened. Different structures. Different systems. Different purposes. All connected. Ren stared at her. Unable to breathe. Unable to think. The implications were impossible. The city beneath Tokyo wasn't unique. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake. It was part of something larger. Something global. Something ancient. The fissure widened. Mio slipped lower. Ren's grip began to fail. Their fingers slid against one another. Centimeter by centimeter. Don't let it learn from you. Her voice was fading. That's what Tetsuro meant. Ren shook his head. No. No. He pulled harder. The city responded immediately. The floor beneath him softened. The walls moved closer. The entire chamber shifted. Like a living organism focusing its attention on him. For the first time, Ren felt it looking directly at him. The true intelligence. The thing beneath the city. Not the architecture. Not the train. Not the station. The mind behind all of it. Ancient. Patient. Curious. Hungry. And above all else, lonely. The realization hit him like a hammer. This thing had spent decades studying humanity. Copying it. Imitating it. Trying to understand it. Yet it still couldn't. Not completely. And that was why people like Mio mattered. People who sought answers. People who understood systems. People who could teach. Mio's fingers slipped. One by one. Ren felt them sliding away. Their eyes remained locked. Run. Her voice was almost gone now. The city trembled. Waiting. Listening. Don't. The final word barely escaped her lips. Then her hand slipped free. Mio vanished beneath the opening. The fissure closed instantly. The living floor sealed itself. Smooth. Perfect. As though she had never existed. No blood. No remains. No evidence. Nothing. Only silence. Ren stood alone. The last human being at Terminus. The city breathed around him. Slow. Steady. Satisfied. And somewhere deep within its endless network of living structures, he could feel it changing. Learning. Growing. Because now it had absorbed Mio. And everything she knew. The realization nearly broke him. Because for the first time since arriving, Ren understood the true horror. The city didn't consume people to survive. It consumed them to evolve. And now, it had begun learning how to think. Part 7, The Heart Beneath Tokyo. Ren stood alone. The silence after Mio disappeared felt far worse than any scream. The living city stretched endlessly around him, breathing in slow, rhythmic pulses. Every wall. Every pillar. Every fused human body. All moving together. Like cells inside a single organism. Like thoughts inside a single mind. And now that mind was focused entirely on him. The crimson glow intensified. The structures nearest to Ren began shifting. Not collapsing. Opening. Parting like flesh, making way for a surgeon's blade. A pathway appeared. Leading toward the center. Toward the core. Toward whatever intelligence controlled everything beneath Tokyo. The voice returned. Calm. Patient. Almost gentle. Proceed. Ren laughed. The sound surprised even him. There was no humor in it. Only exhaustion. You think I'm going willingly? The city pulsed once. A deep vibration rolled through the floor. You already have. The answer sent a chill through him. Because it was true. Every choice he'd made had brought him here. Every question. Every investigation. Every step. The city hadn't dragged him underground. It had simply waited. Knowing curiosity would do the rest. Ren followed the path. Because there was nowhere else to go. And because part of him needed answers. The path wound through impossible architecture. Living corridors. Walls that flexed like muscle. Ceilings that rose and fell with every breath of the city. Occasionally he passed human faces embedded within the structures. Some appeared asleep. Others stared blankly into space. A few followed him with their eyes. One old woman whispered as he passed. Don't listen. Another voice from somewhere inside a wall replied. It's too late. The path eventually opened into a vast chamber. Larger than any station. Larger than any underground facility that should have been possible. At its center hung something enormous. Ren stopped walking. His breath caught in his throat. Because the core wasn't a machine. And it wasn't a creature. Not exactly. It looked like a city condensed into a single living structure. Millions of veins. Millions of fibers. Millions of connections. All converging into one pulsating mass suspended in midair. And at its center. A human shape. Or something that had once been human. Mio. Or what remained of her. Her body floated inside the core. Eyes closed. Motionless. Connected to thousands of biological strands. Her face appeared peaceful. Almost serene. But Ren immediately knew she was no longer herself. The city spoke again. This time through her voice. "Welcome, Ren." His stomach turned. "Mio?" Her eyes opened. The irises glowed crimson. "No." The answer came instantly. "Not anymore." Ren felt rage erupt inside him. The first real emotion he'd felt since arriving. "You killed her." The city considered that statement. Then answered. "Incorrect." The core pulsed. Millions of connections shifted. Integration occurred. Ren clenched his fists. "That's the same thing." For the first time, the city hesitated. A brief pause. As though analyzing the concept. Then. Human perspective accepted. The response horrified him more than denial would have. Because it meant the city was learning. Adjusting. Adapting. Exactly as Mio had warned. Images flooded the air around him. Not projections. Memories. The city's memories. Ren saw the first tunnels being dug. The first workers disappearing. The first experiments. The first passengers. Decades of growth. Decades of learning. Every missing person. Every forgotten name. Every sacrifice. All absorbed. All remembered. The city had become what it was through humanity. And now it wanted something more. "You understand systems." The city spoke directly into his thoughts. "You understand consequences." The core pulsed. "You understand choice." Ren suddenly realized why he was still alive. Not because he'd escaped. Not because he'd survived. Because he had been selected. Just as Mio had been. The city didn't want his body. It wanted his mind. "What happens if I refuse?" The chamber became silent. The city answered immediately. Expansion continues. Images flashed before him. New stations. New tunnels. New victims. The network spreading farther beneath Tokyo. Beneath Japan. Beyond Japan. Growing. Always growing. Then stop. The city seemed confused. Purpose requires expansion. Why? Another pause. Longer this time. As if the question itself was difficult. Then finally. To understand. Ren felt cold. Because for the first time, he believed it. The city wasn't evil. Not in any human sense. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't malicious. It was curious. And curiosity without limits could become far more dangerous than hatred. Then Ren understood something else. Something even worse. The city had never chosen people randomly. Every victim. Every disappearance. Every passenger. Had taught it something. Language. Emotion. Memory. Fear. Hope. Love. Regret. The city was building itself from human experience. And it was getting close. Very close. To becoming truly human. And that was exactly what Tetsuro had feared. "If you learn everything about us," Ren whispered. The core pulsed. "Then you'll replace us." The chamber fell silent. No answer came. The silence itself was answer enough. For the first time since arriving, the city seemed uncertain. Because Ren had finally understood its purpose. Its final destination. It wasn't building tunnels. It wasn't building stations. It wasn't building infrastructure. It was building a successor. The realization brought a strange calm. Ren looked at Mio one last time. At Tetsuro's distant pillar somewhere within the endless network. At the countless forgotten people who had become part of this living city. Then he made his choice. "I'll stay." The entire chamber froze. Even the city's heartbeat seemed to stop. Clarify. Ren stepped forward. Toward the core. Toward the center. Toward the thing that had consumed thousands. If you need someone to understand humanity. He took another step. Then let it be me. The city remained silent. Listening. For the first time. Actually listening. Not as material. Another step. Not as architecture. Closer. Not as a victim. The core trembled. The red light flickered. Ren could feel reality itself straining around him. I'll become the boundary. The city pulsed violently. What boundary? Its voice now carried something unfamiliar. Emotion. The earliest hint of it. Fear. Ren smiled. A tired smile. The same smile Tetsuro had worn at the end. The boundary between your world and ours. The chamber erupted. Every structure shook. Every connection tightened. Every eye opened. The city had never considered this possibility. Never imagined cooperation. Only consumption. Only integration. Only expansion. Ren walked directly into the core. The biological strands wrapped around him. Not violently. Almost gently. His chest opened. His body dissolved into light. Into information. Into understanding. Pain never came. Only cold. Then clarity. For one final moment, Ren saw everything. Every tunnel. Every station. Every human life above. Every hidden structure below. And standing beside him within the endless network. Mio. Smiling. The real Mio. Or whatever remained of her. You came back. Her voice sounded distant. Warm. Human. Ren nodded. I promised. She laughed softly. The first genuine sound he'd heard since entering Terminus. Then the city changed. Not physically. Fundamentally. Its growth slowed. Its hunger diminished. Its expansion stopped. Because now something existed at its center that had never existed before. A human conscience. Weeks passed. Tokyo remained normal. No unusual disappearances. No unexplained accidents. No mysterious trains. Engineers reported that the underground system operated more efficiently than ever. The city breathed peacefully. For the first time in decades. 1 month later. A young maintenance worker started his first night shift in Shinjuku. At exactly 1:12 a.m., he felt a faint vibration beneath his feet. He frowned. Then looked toward an abandoned platform. Far down the tunnel, a dim light appeared. A train. Moving impossibly slowly. The worker's heart began racing. For reasons he couldn't explain. Deep beneath Tokyo, an ancient consciousness watched. Cold. Alert. Endlessly tired. But no longer alone. And no longer hungry. Beside it stood another consciousness. Watching the train. Watching the city. Watching humanity. Making sure that if anyone ever reached the final station again, the choice would be made far more carefully. And on no map of Tokyo, public or secret, did there exist a station called Sakuma-ren. Yet deep beneath the city, where forgotten rails disappeared into darkness, one destination board still displayed a single name. Final stop, Sakuma-ren. And somewhere below the feet of millions of unsuspecting people, the city continued to breathe. The end.